thanks. Like, hey, Scoob, did you hear Nikki Blake is hosting a Scooby-Doo panel? No. Yeah. Like on today's Scooby-Doo episode, Scooby-Doo and Shaggy meet Nikki Blake. Yeah, and a Scooby panel. Like, we need to get this puppy started. Okay, Nikki Blake, take it away, Scooby-Doo.
Welcome to the Scooby panel. I'm your host, Nikki Blake from ScoobyAddicts.com, and today we are talking about Scooby-Doo versus Disney. Before we begin, I'll have everyone introduce themselves, and Wendy, we'll start with you.
Hi guys, I'm Wendy BRYDGE. I'm a commissioned artist and I've been collecting Scooby for, I'm going to bump it up because I'm getting older, almost 40 years. We're going to start bumping that up a little bit.
Trevor.
My name is Trevor Hawkins, and I'm an artist that does pop culture imagery, and I've loved Scooby-Doo ever since I was sat in front of a TV.
Nice. So we're talking Scooby-Doo versus Disney, and the first thing that I want to cover is, why is it acceptable for people to collect Mickey Mouse or Disney merchandise but not Scooby? Why are Scooby collectors called immature and childish, but you can have 50,000 Disney things in your house and it's collectible? Why is there such a difference? Wendy?
Okay, well, thankfully, I actually don't have any experience with this because I've never had anybody even insinuate that my Scooby collection was childish or anything like that. So I'm super fortunate. That is definitely not any kind of prejudice that I have ever encountered. So the way I'm going to answer this question is going to be a little bit different since I have no experience in this. But what I will say, because everyone has a perception of something. And whether I'm not going to say it's a prejudice against it necessarily, but everyone has a perception. So first of all, I will say it is not childish to collect Scooby or Disney. I want to make that very clear that I am not saying that either of them is. Absolutely not. If you love it and you go to work every day and you take care of everything that you need to get taken care of and you're not going completely broke, it's fine. Collect whatever you like. But I do find this interesting, though, because to me, again, neither is childish, but just perception-wise, without thinking about it, I actually think that Disney projects a more childish kind of thing than Scooby does. I kind of look at Scooby as being a more adult, not actually adult, but a more mature thing to collect than Disney. Now, perhaps a little bit of that is the fact that when I think of Disney, I am primarily not thinking Mickey Mouse. I'm primarily thinking princess movies because, that's what I loved growing up. And to me, that creates a perception of it being something girly. So to me, again, it's not childish, but at just like a first glance without thinking about it, a guy collecting Disney, to me, I would have to correct myself and be like, no, it's not childish. It's fine. But I would think that it is because I'm just making that kind of personal association with the more feminine stuff that Disney kind of catered to. So I think of that as being a little bit more childish than Scooby. But yeah, I just kind of feel bad that anybody is made to feel like anything they collect is childish. Unless you're acting like a child, which, hey, newsflash, you don't have to collect anything to act like a child. And, it's unpleasant. But yeah, no, thankfully, as far as I have ever experienced, no one has ever sort of tried to put that onto me. So I want to hear about your guys' experience with that because thankfully I don't have any.
I have been told that I need to grow up and that it's childish to have Scooby and like, what are you doing? And people have asked me, like, is this worth money? Can you sell it and get money? And it's like, I collect it because I want it. I don't look at it as it having a monetary value because to me, I don't want to get rid of it. So it's really worth everything to me just as it is, but not monetarily. Like, I'm not collecting stuff with the intent that someday I'm going to get rich off of this collection. Like, if it all fit in a casket, it would be buried with me,
Yeah.
but it won't. So, Trevor, what are your thoughts on why it seems to be childish to collect Scooby, but not to collect Disney?
Well, it's an interesting question. I've not really had much of the slander, I would call it, for collecting, because I end up getting it a little bit more for my superhero stuff, especially before Marvel came out with their franchise and apparently made it okay for adults to like things. But I really I feel like Disney is more acceptable to adults is because Disney things were marketed as commodities and products and images. It's like you just look at the theme parks. You look at the wonderful world of Disney. It's like for generations it was a staple for families, on a weekend and I think it was Sunday night. And they had their toes fingers in every kind of entertainment. And I think owning a piece of that, you know, I mean, there again, it relies on the fact that a certain amount of nostalgia is good for an adult, and then apparently a certain amount of nostalgia is too far. I think people, along with Disney too, it's like, well, Steamboat Willie is like, 100 years old. So generations like us now are dealing with, you deal with some people and it's like, well, I remember when my grandparents had it. So it's almost old as it's new, some of it. So that's also why I say it's hit its timestamp and then it's become kind of something collectible as an objective item. I mean, again, I don't know if I'm right or not. I'm just talking about my perspective. But Scooby's Saturday morning, Scooby's, orange juice in a bowl of cereal in front of a TV. I mean, that's how a lot of people cemented with it. I mean, now it's not because you can see Scooby streaming anytime you want. So people watch it in this different vacuum, but a lot of people definitely associate with being a kid. And, when they grew up, they stopped eating cereal for breakfast. They stopped watching TV on Saturday mornings. So they stopped, buying plushes of Scooby. So, I mean, I think that it's just a weird, slight difference, but I think it explains it in my perspective. I mean, though I think it's fine to collect them both too. So,
I've heard a lot of people say that they felt like they had to hide their Scooby collections or hide that they liked Scooby-Doo. And I hate to hear people say that, but I get it because I had to do the same thing. And it was mostly because I was tired of being told I was childish and I needed to get rid of stuff and grow up. But I don't know that I've ever heard anybody say that to somebody that collects Disney. Like that's acceptable. And maybe it is because Disney is more of like a high-end kind of thing, and Hanna-Barbera was always more low budget. So maybe people kind of distinguish between those two in that way. So maybe Scooby isn't as acceptable. When I tell people that I do a Scooby-Doo podcast, they're just like, what could you possibly be talking about Scooby-Doo for like on a podcast? And it's like, well, we're in our fourth season. And they're like, how can you possibly have 4 seasons of talking about Scooby-Doo? And then they'll be like, well, I don't understand it, but as long as you're having fun. And sometimes I feel like it's very condescending. But yeah, there's just some weird thing with Scooby and people that aren't really Scooby fans that they look at it in a much different light than other things like Disney.
Yeah. Trevor kind of piqued something in my brain when he mentioned like the Sunday night Disney. Like I remember that when I was a kid and it had like this fun little trailer and everything. I wonder if part of the issue is that Disney is often associated with something that you do as a family, meaning it's not just the children, but it's also the adults with the children. sitting down to watch a movie or something, whereas Scooby is very much Saturday morning, kids are up, parents leave them alone, you know, get yourself something to eat and go and watch cartoons. Like maybe that is a part of it, like that perception of how, because Scooby's, I don't know that I've ever seen Scooby marketed even between just people. I don't even mean like in an official capacity. I don't know that I've ever seen Scooby treated as like a family thing that you sit down and you watch Scooby-Doo together. But I definitely think of Disney that way for sure. So perhaps that's part of the perception, giving it that childish thing, because people can't imagine adults getting up on Saturday morning to watch it, but they can definitely picture sitting with their kids and watching a Disney movie instead.
That makes a lot of sense. And the fact that Disney is also more full-length movies as opposed to anything Hanna-Barbera made, mostly being made for TV. I guess movies are maybe more acceptable to watch as a family.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you think Scooby would have been more accepted if it was created by Disney? Trevor?
That's really a good question. And I really just couldn't come up with one thing to say. And I don't even know if what I have to say agrees with me. So, um, I don't know if this would be touching into something else and my brain gushes. So please forgive me all. But I think Disney could have pulled it off. Now, would they have chosen to? But the one thing that triggered in my mind, and I checked out before we got this started, if you ever doubt that Disney could have dealt with it, go watch The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, the 1949 cartoon, narrated by Bing Crosby. The backgrounds, the way they did the people, the spooky, the humor, yeah, I think they could have nailed it if they wanted to. And then if you watch the Mickey Mouse Club, they did live action adaptation of the Hardy Boys and the Tower Treasure. So I really think, yeah, I think they could have done it. I just guess they didn't figure there would be an audience for kids solving mysteries at the time. So
Wendy, would Scooby have been more accepted if it was created by Disney?
I'm not sure that it's necessarily a matter of being accepted, especially today, because I do feel like things have shifted a lot, especially in the last decade or so, where, I mean, you can't even go to the store and buy a toy for a child anymore. Everything is marketed as a collectible for the adult collector. So I do think that things have definitely become more acceptable in any form of like toy or cartoon or kids property collecting. Scooby-Doo definitely wasn't as mainstream popular as Disney or Mickey was. But to be honest, I think a lot of that is just, we can't forget Disney has like 30 plus years on Scooby. It was around a lot longer. And Hanna-Barbera was a lesser known studio than Disney, obviously. Now, yes, they were doing something different. One was doing feature-length films, which is a whole other animal. But I also kind of feel, if you look back at how Hanna-Barbera marketed itself and how Disney has marketed itself, I just think that Disney, because they were doing films, they had more money to play with. And I just think that their self-promotion was so much more aggressive than anything that Hanna-Barbera was doing, either just to promote Scooby or just to promote itself as a studio. And so I think it's more just a matter of, I guess, not availability, because there's a lot of Scooby content even prior to the modern day. But I think it's just more accessibility. Didn't really see Scooby in the theaters until like just a couple of years ago, really. But Disney for, almost a century. and that's a more acceptable is not the right term, but it's a more popular form of like going as a family kind of entertainment. You go out to the movies to watch something, as opposed to a time where most people probably didn't even have a television in their home. So going to the theater was a really big deal. And this is also where I think we can see that, because like we weren't sure if we were supposed to focus on like just Scooby and Mickey or Scooby and Disney. But this, I think, is where we kind of see why we can talk about Scooby versus Disney as opposed to Mickey, because Disney branded itself. Scooby became its own brand, in my opinion. I don't even think that Scooby necessarily needs to be associated with Hanna-Barbera at this point. Scooby is its own thing. You can't think of Disney though, or excuse me, you can't think of Mickey without thinking Disney. You're still drawing that link. Now, Mickey has just become like a mascot for the brand. Scooby is not a mascot. Scooby has become his own franchise apart from Hanna-Barbera and anything else they ever did. But Disney and all of its properties remain under one umbrella when people think about it, and that is the Disney umbrella. So I don't know that, I mean, if Scooby had been created by Disney, I think it would still be around, but only in the capacity that anything Disney has already done is around. I think he would have become like just another mascot. I don't think he would have had the life that he was allowed to live, and sort of, because I mean, Scooby kind of reached legend status. I suppose Mickey does that as well, but it's different. It's not the same kind of thing. So I don't know that Scooby would be more acceptable than Mickey or Disney, because today I don't really think that people are still making that same kind of like, well, one is more acceptable than the other. They are still two very different things, and yet they're very similar in what they were created for. I'm just glad that they weren't, because as we'll talk about later, each one of those properties, Scooby and Disney, bring two similar but also very different things to the table for children. And I think both of those things are necessary to raise decent, well-informed and just well-functioning children in society. I think you need both of them, and they both kind of need to work hand in hand to do that.
So how do you think Scooby would have differed if it was a Disney product? Like, one thing, Wendy, you said that you think Scooby would have lasted even if it was Disney, but I feel like Disney doesn't use characters other than Mickey for a long period of time. So Scooby might have gotten a couple movies, and then that would have been the end, and then it would have been vaulted. And, you know, the one thing that I like about Scooby is that most of it can be found on DVD or Blu-ray. And, you know, with Disney, they like to lock things away so you can't buy it forever.
Yeah.
So how do you think Scooby would have differed if it was a Disney product?
Yeah, this was a very interesting thing. At first, I couldn't think of what I wanted to say, and then it just kind of all made sense in my brain. If Scooby was Disney, I think the major change would be that the villains would be scarier. The danger would feel more dangerous. So all in all, as silly as this is going to sound, I think that Scooby would feel more quote unquote real if it was a Disney property. And ironically, by today's standards, not by previous standards when all these classic things were happening, but by today's standards, I feel like it would also have become less child friendly as far as culture is concerned. Because if you stop and you think about it, we do consider both of those things to be children's properties. Disney characters, Disney movies for children, Scooby for children. But one main difference between those two things that I hadn't really thought about before. We have said so many times that Scooby is like a safe place. Scooby is an escape. You can sit down and watch 20 minutes of Scooby and you know that no matter what goes on in the episode, nothing actually bad is going to happen that they can't handle. No one is actually going to get hurt. And you can just relax and enjoy it. I cannot name one single Disney movie where if I was having a rough day and I just needed an escape from reality, there is not one Disney movie that I could sit down and watch and not walk away from completely anxiety ridden. Now, I'm not saying that that's always bad. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, because Disney movies definitely serve a purpose, but Disney inspires anxiety. Scooby inspires calm and an escape. And I think that is the main difference between them. And obviously, if Scooby was a Disney property, I think he would get the Disney treatment, which would mean too much of reality. I know that a lot of people look at Disney and they think, oh, it's fantasy, it's fairy tale, it's so far removed from reality, it's unrelatable. I don't agree with that, because as an adult now, looking back on traumatic things that have happened in my life, and then looking back at Disney movies that kind of prepared me for them, that was a real eye-opener, in the sense of like that served a purpose that helped me later in life. And I think a lot of people don't realize that, because it's not something that you really can see. You show a little kid, at 5 or 6 years old, you make them watch Bambi, and they lose it when Bambi's mom gets killed and then his dad rejects him, and all of that, all we see is that, the kids are sad. And then at the end, it's fine, because, it's a happy ending. It's a Disney movie. There's a happy ending at the end, regardless of what goes on in the movie. But because we don't see the impact that had beyond, oh, it made the kids sad, we completely miss the kids who grow up and, at some point in their young life or their young adult life, one of their parents dies. I know this is not Disney or Hanna-Barbera, but it's another good example of this. I was thinking about The Land Before Time the other day, and another traumatic childhood event where Littlefoot's mom dies. And you can remember how that made you feel. And all of a sudden I was like, that prepared me for when my mom died. And you don't think of that in the moment, because the time, Land Before Time to when I was 13, it's not like it was like a conscious thing of like, oh, that prepared me for this. But I do think that there is an argument to be made for allowing children to experience real life trauma before they have to go through it themselves. Because somewhere in your brain, that message of like, yes, this horrible thing happened, and yes, you felt every second of it, but you know what? You were okay. You made it through. Because that is the beauty of a Disney movie and a Scooby episode as well. Good triumphs over evil. The end. Always. It doesn't matter how hard it was to get to that point, you will get to that point. Scooby also does that, but the way that Disney and the way that Scooby approach their sense of whatever lesson or morality or value that they are trying to instill in the kids, they approach it a little bit differently. And again, this is why I think it's fantastic that Scooby was not a Disney property, because I think that both of those things are needed. We can't have just the trauma without the escape. The kids, even adults, we need to have that escape part too, and Scooby is the escape. Because even though, yes, if you think too hard about a Scooby mystery and you're like, oh my God, they could have died. If that was a real life event, they could have died. But Hanna-Barbera they didn't play it like that. You never really, as a kid, I never really felt that sense of like, oh my goodness, is Scooby going to fall off the cliff and die? I can't think of a single instance where that is the feeling that cropped up in me from watching any of classic Scooby. But again, almost every single Disney movie, you are like on the edge of your seat, even at 6 or 7 years old, and you are scared of what's going to happen. So Disney, they kind of coat it in this like magic and fantasy veil to make it so that the kids are like, they're gonna recover from it. You know, I don't think any of us were permanently traumatized by Bambi's mom dying in a way that like messed us up. I don't think so. Because again, how it ends makes it okay. But Disney really does, if you stop and you look at it, if you pare it right down to like its essence, it is showing kids, it's portraying a very realistic set of circumstances that there is every chance in the world that at some point in that kid's life, they are going to have to deal with that. And so I feel like Disney prepares you for those moments and lets you feel what it's going to feel like so that you're not totally surprised and shocked by it, and you can learn how to deal with things like grief. Whereas Scooby, there's a struggle, obviously. There is villainy and hardship, but that's not what Scooby focuses on. Scooby focuses on the techniques of how to overcome that. Both super important things for kids and adults, because again, no matter who you are going to experience those terrible things in your life. You're going to experience even the lesser stuff like in Scooby, where it's just people out to hurt other people because they're greedy. That's the real world. So I really think that we all maybe have done ourselves a disservice by looking at both Disney and Scooby from this lens of like, oh, well, it's all just make believe and it's all just fantasy and it's all just whatever. Like, no, there was a lot of thought put into those things, both of them. And there is something that you can get out of each of them. They are both designed to help kids and adults, because I mean, you should still be able to watch Bambi and get something out of that even as an adult. You should be able to take something very important away from that. But Scooby primarily promotes the positive outcome. You get the positive outcome in Disney, but Disney is more about the characters and their struggle and how you feel towards them, your empathy to them. Whereas Scooby is more pushing the story, the mystery, the solution, and the happy ending. We would not, even though, yes, Disney, it touches on that too. It's not that it's not in them, but it is not focused on the way that it is in Scooby. And so if Scooby were a Disney product, we would have never had that. And I think that that is a really important, especially for when you get a little bit older than what I think Disney is geared towards, or at least my perception of that based on how I was introduced to each of them. Scooby's real world life lessons help you to deal with the situations that Disney presents to you. So in actuality, the two work together very, very well. But in order to do that, they do need to be two separate things, and they are. So thank God Scooby was not a Disney property, because then all we would have is the one. And I think we would be greatly lacking, because you need that escape. And I'm sorry, but Disney is not an escape ever. But Scooby is, like, pretty much 100% of the time if it's classic Scooby.
Disney makes me anxious when I watch the movies. So yeah, I don't feel like that when I watch Scooby. Mm-hmm. We wouldn't have all the villains that we have, because it would have been like a couple movies. So we would never have had all of these villains. And then, you know, I wonder what type of villains we would have ended up with. It would have been something that has some type of magical powers, and typically they make themselves really big, and Yeah. So we would have missed out on a lot of really cool stuff if Disney created Scooby.
Well, I think I want to throw a little differing opinion. If you remember the TV shows, Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers and DuckTales, that's exactly what Scooby was. Blustery little kids and mentors and going through and adventures and up and down and planes and crashes, and it was always okay at the end. I mean, those two things were Disney doing the serial thing, and the kids that really love that still love that to this day. I think Disney's remiss in not revisiting those things. And like Huey, Dewey, and Louie, they're really cool. And of course, there's the trauma embedded because, well, Donald's not married, and who knows where their parents are. Though I think Disney indicated that there is a mom for the three of them that's around.
Yeah.
But I feel like in that way, if they approached it like the Fox and the Hound, or um, it depends on what they choose to do with it at the time. And as I say, I'm talking about 70s to 80s TV later. It would depend on when Disney started to handle the property. But I do agree with Wendy about the depth and the empathy. But also, when you talk about Disney got to cherry pick through decades and hundreds of years of stories, like The Little Mermaid, Snow White. They didn't always come up with these things, whereas Hanna-Barbera was creating Scooby as they went along. So maybe some of that gravitas came from the fact that those stories came from other places, other histories, and they were used together. But well, it just depends on what they did. But I said if they did a series with the Scooby Gang and they did it like the DuckTales, I mean, it'd be an adventure thing more than a mystery thing. But I would so totally have watched it, and I would have trusted them, I think, with it. So there's that.
Yeah, I guess I could see it being in that type of style. The other thing, like with Scooby, do you think it would have been geared more towards younger kids like Winnie the Pooh or towards older kids like DuckTales?
Yeah, I guess if Scooby had been Disney, I think the closest thing that you could compare it to would be DuckTales. But again, I mean, I would argue that DuckTales was maybe Disney's answer to Scooby. Because we don't see DuckTales until the 80s. Scooby's already been around for quite some time. And I could see them being like, okay, well, we've done all these movies and they're great and everything. Although DuckTales, I'm pretty sure, started out as a film as well, and then it went to series as opposed to being a series first and then the movie, the lamp one. Or was it the series first? I can't remember.
I do not recall. So.
I don't know. I remember the movie was I was obsessed with that Magic Lamp movie when I was a kid, the DuckTales one. I'm completely obsessed with it. I've seen it like 75 million times. But yeah, I think that if Scooby had been under Disney's umbrella, that is likely the type of show or movie that it would have been. But if you think of that DuckTales movie specifically, yes, I understand it. It has less of like that spooky thing that Scooby's got going on. But at the end of the day, it could be Boo Brothers. It could be Reluctant Werewolf. I mean, they could be the same thing. They're very similar in like just what they're doing and what it is. Yeah, I don't know.
And it also comes down to, it may not fit in any of these questions, but would Disney have gone anthropomorphic animal, or would they have gone fully human with the whole thing? I think that would have made a difference as well. I mean, because Mickey and his gang, they're all talking animals. And they're all like a sitcom because they're all adults. They're talking animals and they're cute, but they're a guy, his girlfriend, he's got a car, he's got problems, he's got a boat, it's crashing, versus, teenagers. So I mean, as much as you had the cute talking animals, it was still set into a vibe. Again, going back to the adult, it was subtly adult. And that may also link back to why adults feel more okay adulting with Mickey. Because I mean, Donald had anger issues. I mean, he should be in therapy. But I mean, he made me nervous. And Mickey was sometimes altogether too nice, you know. Um, And then the whole thing between Goofy and Pluto, I just do not understand. But that also would indicate there would be a gang of animals, and then there would be Scooby with a collar. It's like, well, so we got this dog that's upright and talking, and this dog doesn't talk. He's wearing a collar.
Well, I
What
mean,
does
we do kind of get that in Scooby, though.
well that
Scooby can talk and Scooby can do all kinds of things. And everybody, when somebody calls him a dog, he's like, dog, where?
right.
I'm not a dog. And when he talks to other dogs, they bark. So we do kind of have that Pluto Goofy thing going on in Scooby as well, where the other dogs are just regular and Scooby's something special.
Special.
Yeah, I'm not sure though that they would have mixed human and animal characters. So
Yeah, maybe not.
would they have made Scooby human, or would they have made the gang animals? That is a good question.
Yeah, I don't think Scooby would work as a human.
I don't
I could
think so
maybe
either.
I could
Yeah, I
maybe
don't.
see them giving the gang like some kind of animal treatment, maybe. But
And would they have made them a pack of dogs or just like random animals? Maybe not super random, because typically they do keep the animals somewhat.
mhm.
They might
Yeah.
have all been dog, but I'm in my mind now. I'm wanting to do art of Mickey as Fred and Minnie as Daphne, and Clarabelle as Velma and Goofy as Shaggy, and Pluto would be, of course, Scooby.
Yeah.
This
Good
makes more.
idea. Very good idea. So Disney characters were typically created for movies, which we already mentioned. How do you think the franchise would look if Scooby started as a movie? Trevor?
I think if the franchise had started as a movie, we'd probably be better off for it. I mean, like even shows like Batman 66, they had a film they put in theaters first, and then they had the show. So like the movie was almost like a premonition or advertisement or a way to get it out there that there's going to be a show coming on. Um, though maybe the movie was released after the first season. My
After
brain,
the first season, yeah, it was, yeah.
okay, my brain doesn't always, but I think wasn't it filmed first?
No, because they couldn't get Julie Newmar for the movie.
That's
That's
why
why they
Lee
need Meriwether's in
Merriweather.
it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyway, there's still a thought in there somewhere that's worth thinking about. So even more so that they thought enough of the TV thing
Yeah.
to put something in the theater. I mean,
Mhm.
maybe back then they had a lot more um, openness about it. I can't really think of anything modern at the moment where a movie was made and then, stuff was put to television immediately from scratch. But I mean, of course, the superhero stuff always plays between the two. Um, but I think if they had invested in a full, or I mean, we're also forgetting that Disney was a short. I mean, Mickey was shorts. They were small cartoons. They were like a third of the length of a Scooby. So they were putting those against live action movies and stuff, and then you'd go to the theater and get it all together. So you could probably, they would have started with maybe some shorter Scooby things or a serial, have a longer adventure cut into pieces, and maybe started that in the mid 60s. I think that would have been nothing but good for Scooby in the end. Yeah.
Wendy, what do you think the Scooby franchise would look like if Scooby started as a movie?
Okay, well, first to go back to something Trevor said, Stargate is an example of the movie came out in I think 94, and by 97 they were making a series, and it's one of the best series that ever, in my opinion, that's like top 10 for me. Made I think 10 seasons. But that was a pretty quick turnaround, I think, to go from a movie to like a full-blown series, and then to have it have that kind of longevity too. And without it like completely overshadowing the movie, though, like they are definitely their own thing, but the series does in a way pick up from the movie, so you don't have to watch them together, but it makes sense if you watch them together too. So just as like a side note, that is an instance. I mean, I would still consider the 90s to be modern. I think I mean
Yeah,
a lot
and
of people.
also though, I mean, the series came out I'm talking about like an intentional. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I'm talking about it with an intentionality. We're putting a movie out and we're working on a TV show to release a year later. Whereas Stargate was something wonderful, and then some wonderful people said, "Let's make a show from this cool movie." Does that make sense? It was a strong inspiration, but as far as my thinking would be as a mechanical plan to say we're going to start here first. But
Yeah.
I don't know.
With Dark Shadows, they did what they did, where with Batman, where while the series was still going on, they made 2 movies, which kind of, I mean, they sort of had to do with the series, but they also were totally different. As far as like starting with like shorts though, I mean, I know you're going to argue it's just the character, but when Scooby tried to do shorts, you guys didn't like it. We do have little
Scrappy was
7-minute
good.
segments. So I don't know
Well,
that would have, even if it didn't have Scrappy in it, I don't know that would have worked. I don't think you could condense an actual interesting mystery, what we know of like Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? I don't know that you could condense that into a short like the Mickeys
And I
well,
think
and
that
have
was
it
the
work.
problem with the Scooby shorts was that they
Yeah.
weren't mysteries. So
Yeah.
it
But
took away like pretty much everything
right.
that Scooby-Doo was.
Exactly. And yet I feel like they had to do that in order to fit that 7 minutes, or 12 minutes, or whatever it is. You know what I mean?
right. But
Because they just didn't, I don't think that there was a way of doing, I mean, with the new Scooby-Doo mysteries, where I think they're like 12 minutes long, they tried to get back to the mystery while also condensing it. And again, I mean, it's fine, but it's not what Scooby was meant to be. So I think if they had tried to start like that, they would have tanked it immediately.
well, maybe going to the 15-minute shorts like the old Batman, Superman, Captain Marvel, like the black and whites, where it was maybe more a 15-minute than a 7. Maybe, but it would have taken a lot of vision at the time, I think, for someone to sit down and in that sea of movies at the time or whatever and say, well, this is something that might work. I mean,
Yeah.
we're looking at it from modern to the past, and maybe plugging that in would have worked, but I don't think it would have been on anybody's mind at the time,
Mm-hmm.
either in
Yeah.
the 60s or the 40s. So,
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the main difference, I think, if Scooby had started out as a movie, is that we would have a lot more backstory for the gang than what we actually get in the series. Now, I still don't think that it would be needed, because you can look at, there are plenty of movies, and typically they are about like a mystery solving type thing, where it's like a Scooby episode. We don't like, the only backstory we get is like, here's these people and here's how they know each other. And then they just go do the stuff, and we don't really know a lot about their personal life. And that's very successful. And to me, like, I prefer that even in a movie setting. Today, I can't remember the last time that I saw like a new release movie that I actually could sit through, because they have bogged it down with so much personal crap. They're doing that in the TV series as well. And I'm just like, can we get to the point? Solve the crime, solve the mystery, give me a story. What is the plot? There is no plot. The plot is just becoming whatever the characters are going through. And like, I'm not into that. So I think though, if Scooby had been a movie first, we'd have had more of that like character development. But I mean, I still think it's unnecessary information. I don't think we need to know, like what your favorite color is and who you slept with last night and like where your mom and dad live. I mean, I just don't think it's necessary. It's a mystery show. Focus on the story, focus on the plot. So I don't think I would want to have seen Scooby start that way, because it would have immediately hindered his ability to be more relatable to everyone because of how generic the characters are. As soon as you give the characters too much personal character, I mean, it's hard to change them in people's minds after you have done that. And that's why people are so desperate to change Scooby now, because they are such a blank slate that everyone is just like chomping at the bit. Well, cool, I can do whatever I want with this. Well, okay, but you know what? Some people are generic. I'm generic. I'm boring. I don't need to be changed or updated. So, Scooby doesn't need that either. But like episodes of Scooby, they're about the mystery, they're about the plot. The gang is there, we love them, but we don't really need to know what they're doing outside of solving the mystery. In a movie form, though, I think we'd have got more of that. Kind of maybe is part of the issue with Boo Brothers, which we talked about recently, where they put in a lot of like personal, I mean, it's a little bit different, but like all that stuff with the crazy chick next door, that's a personal problem. And it padded out the movie, yeah, but it was boring. And it didn't need to be there. And the mystery itself hurt because of that. So, yeah, Disney does movies really well. I'm not taking anything away from that, but I don't think that Scooby would have either the staying power or the popularity that he has grown to have if he had begun life as a film, because they would have all been fleshed out way more and it would have made them much less relatable to the majority of people, because they wouldn't be as generic anymore.
It's hard for me to imagine anything other than Scooby-Doo, Where Are You starting the franchise. So to even try to think of it being a movie, starting as a movie, just my brain just can't even think about it because it's not how it was. And Disney Scooby would have been completely different.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even know that it would have been a mystery. The gang wouldn't be what they are. It would just be a totally different thing. So I'm just not going to think about it. We're just going to keep Scooby the way that he is. Do you think that Mickey would have lasted if it originated at Hanna-Barbera? Trevor?
It's a hard call to make. I mean, I think of Tom and Jerry kind of vibes. I mean, where they have a strong beginning, and then still a lot of loyal love, but they're not iconic. And I wonder if Mickey had started Hanna-Barbera, he would just have been the same fate. Yeah, I have a hard time thinking that there's a lot of mice in Hanna-Barbera. So
I don't know if I would agree that Tom and Jerry aren't iconic.
I didn't say they weren't. I just said they've got a loyal following, but I mean, some people I would talk to wouldn't even know, who that was anymore. And they definitely exist. Their story is always exactly the same every time, not unlike Scooby, but
Yeah.
I think once people see so many Tom and Jerry, sometimes I feel like you feel like I don't need to see them again. But I mean and also Tom and Jerry are Jerry is kind of the small guy, David versus Goliath, whereas Mickey was presented as his own thing, So I don't know if Hanna-Barbera would have given such power to the small person to begin with. But I think of there are a few mice to say, and I like them a lot, but I can't even remember all their names. But I don't know. I don't think it would have had the longevity.
Yeah. Wendy, do you think Mickey would have lasted if it was originated at Hanna-Barbera?
I think it would have lasted, but I don't think it would have reached the iconic heights that he has with Disney. Pretty much the opposite of what I just said in the last question about, Scooby starting as a movie. If Mickey had been in Hanna-Barbera, I don't think that he would have been given the amount of character that Disney gave him. he would have been more generic. His story would have been more generic. And therefore, he would probably, I mean, again, like Tom and Jerry, it's not like they went anywhere. They're still very popular, but there's nothing extraordinary about the majority of Hanna-Barbera properties. They're all very good, but there's nothing about them to set them apart from everything else. So I think Mickey would still be around, but I don't think that he would have become the face of the company or had the same kind of opportunity to grow as a character, because Mickey is something that has like not changed over the years for the most part. You know, they update his look and stuff, but as far as like that character goes, he's pretty much what he's always been. I don't think there would have been room for him to be that way in Hanna-Barbera.
I'm not sure that I don't think Mickey would have lasted at Hanna-Barbera. I mean, look at Scooby, right? And look at all the other things that they've created. We have a room full of Scooby, but could you imagine if Jabberjaw was the one that is still going, right? Or, Speed Buggy. I mean, people know who they are, but they haven't lasted for 50 years like Scooby has. And I think that they would have had to have chosen one thing essentially to be that one character for Hanna-Barbera that like lasts the test of time. So if Mickey did originate at Hanna-Barbera, would Scooby still have been as popular, or do you think a different character like Mickey would have been more popular than Scooby? Wendy?
I'm not really sure what has ever appealed to people about Mickey. I did really like Minnie when I was growing up, but so I don't know that I can even answer this question because I don't understand what it is about Mickey that people like. So, I mean, I definitely don't think that Scooby would have survived as the sheepdog they originally wanted to make him. Cannot picture myself with a room full of sheepdogs for sure. I think part of Scooby's appeal and longevity was how Ewo drew him and what he is. Because like you can like they played on the stereotype of a big oversized oaf dog, and he played that up, and so it worked. Not going to work for any other breed of dog quite the same way. So Scooby kind of needed to be everything that he was in order to be the popular character that he has become. I don't I don't know that a mouse could actually compete if Disney didn't have the backing of the rest of its franchise in people's minds, pushing it to the forefront. I still am not sure that Mickey could actually compete with Scooby. I think that Mickey is just more mainstream. I think that there are still probably, I mean, when I was growing up, nobody even knew what Scooby was around here. I was the only one that was into Scooby. Nobody else watched it because there was no access to it here. I mean, I was very fortunate. We had like a big C-band dish and we were able to get like American broadcasts. My friends couldn't. And Canadian content TV was, I mean, it's still crap. It was crap then, it's crap now. So I still think that Mickey is just more well known than Scooby because of how Disney has like branded itself for a century as the premier event in animation and cartoons. It's not that Hanna-Barbera didn't market itself, but you see, I look at it now, and again, I love Hanna-Barbera and everything they did. I still think was like aces. Even on their worst day, it was still better than a lot of the stuff that came after it. However, I would argue that Hanna-Barbera was quantity over quality, and Disney was quality over quantity. Now, I am very much aware that there is a lot of quantity with Disney. I do understand that. But thinking of everyone we've spoken to about like how fast the turnover was at Hanna-Barbera. We're working on like 10 shows at one time. Get them out, get them out, get them out. There's not a lot of time there for quality. Now, Hanna-Barbera in and of itself is a quality on a tier all its own. So again, I am not speaking to that. But that studio just could not compete with what Disney was doing with their budget, with the time that they were allowing every single thing to be produced. You know, when Hanna-Barbera started sending stuff overseas to get it done there because it was cheaper, the quality suffered. Have you ever seen the animation in the new Scooby-Doo movies? It's horrible. It's not good. A lot of it is really bad. That's because they were shipping it overseas and they weren't doing as good of a job as what they were doing here. Disney always seemed to value that quality factor over the quantity. And so, yeah, I'm sorry. I forgot what the question was. I'm completely like, oh my God, I have notes on the side and I'm trying not to just read them, but
If Mickey originated at Hanna-Barbera, would Scooby still have been as popular?
okay. Wow. Yeah. So, I mean, both studios did great things. Both studios had characters that were lovable, even Mickey on some level, because like obviously a lot of people do love him. I think Scooby is a more lovable character than Mickey. But I don't really I don't know that they would have been in competition with each other, because even now there isn't, I mean, there is a competition, but it's actually not a competition either. They both coexist perfectly fine. I don't know that it's ever actually been a battle. I've never really seen it sort of portrayed like that. But I mean, I think it's just a testament that two different studios do have characters that are that iconic that each of them in their own right has lasted as long as they have and are still going strong and are showing like no signs of slowing down. You slap Mickey on something, somebody's going to buy it. You slap Scooby on something, somebody's going to buy it. So I think both studios did the best that they could with what they had, and each of them came out with like a really cool character and property. And I'm just glad that people love both of them. And I don't think there's anything wrong with either of them. And I don't think it should be a competition.
I would definitely opt for Scooby over Mickey. I mean, it's obvious, but a talking dog who's super cute versus a talking mouse who sounds like he got kicked in the balls a few too many times. I mean, that's a no-brainer. Scooby for sure. For sure.
Yeah.
Trevor, if Mickey originated at Hanna-Barbera, do you still think Scooby would be as popular?
I think he would be. Again, I don't. We're looking at the time Mickey's been around. The fact that he was iconic as an animated figure and one of the first. But also you forget that Mickey had a sheepdog phase of his own, as Oswald the rabbit. So Oswald was the version that was kicked to the curb, and then they went with the upgrade. So, I don't think Mickey, had he been created in 1969 alongside of Scooby would still win. And also one thing that I don't know if I should say out loud, but it sounds horribly dismal, but Scooby outlived his studio. Would Mickey outlive Disney?
No.
But that's what I said. Scooby's literally, as you say, he's become his own, but his studio's no more. So
I don't think that Mickey could outlive Disney because he's essentially like the Disney mascot.
Right, yeah.
So it's almost like he doesn't exist without Disney.
Agreed.
But yeah, Scooby has gone through several different studios. So he's not necessarily like, I don't see Scooby as a mascot for anything. I see him as
Right, right. But also I see him as beyond, you see him as him and you don't necessarily associate him with a cartoon brand anymore. And we could have a whole other conversation, which would probably run along similar channels, was like, what if Scooby, I mean, if you look at who owns him now, what if Scooby was a Warner Brothers creation up against Daffy and Bugs and all that, you know? I mean, probably the similar arguments and discussions would run. Though I definitely think Scooby and Bugs would be quite good friends, I think.
I would not mind seeing a crossover.
That's why I would love to see that.
Yeah. Yeah. My final question, which you guys did not get. How do you think Disney would have handled Scrappy?
I'll let Wendy go first.
Oh, I'm trying to think of something Disney that I would equate to Scrappy. It's going to seem like an odd comparison, but I could perhaps, I mean, I would hope that they would sort of just turn him into, oh my gosh, it wasn't something I watched a lot, and I can't even think of the characters' names. Do you remember Tailspin?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like they would have given Scrappy a more strictly sidekick role. Technically, we could argue, yes, Scrappy was a sidekick, but also I've never looked at Scrappy as a sidekick. Because when Scrappy is there, he kind of dominates. I mean, he doesn't, because he's still submissive to Scooby, because he defers to Scooby all of the time. But he's also not Scooby's sidekick, because Scooby doesn't step up to do the things. So I don't really think that Scrappy is like an official sidekick character. I think Disney would have made him one, though. I think he would have taken on that role. If I was going to equate him to a character that already exists, though, I think Scrappy would be like Webby in DuckTales. Who is, I mean, she can be like sometimes they're just like, get away. Be quiet. She had that sort of like annoying voice, which again, I still think, like, God bless Lenny Weinrib. He did a great job with what he was given. But I think that the first mistake that they made with Scrappy was having Lenny voice him that way. I think that Scrappy would have not had that same annoyance that a lot of people feel towards him if Don had voiced him from the start. Now, I do also think, though, that having the two different voices and two very different characters, I would argue that there's a huge difference between season 1 Scrappy and then everything that came after, is that you get to see character growth. And that makes sense. In the real world, that makes sense. You would start, this way, and you grow as a person. And I do feel like Scrappy's character had that growth, and I do think that that's fine. That's acceptable. But he does, early Scrappy might have that sort of Webby, sort of like is hanging around and is beneficial, but also doesn't really need to be there and is just kind of, I don't know. I still think they'd have made him more of just like a straight up sidekick, though. I think we would have they maybe would have updated Scooby to suit Scrappy and made Scooby less scared. Because I could actually see a Disney version of Scooby and Scrappy as like Chip and Dale off on their adventures. I could see them doing that and actually changing Scooby's, like making him less scared and more adventurous to suit a sidekick like Scrappy.
Interesting. Trevor, how do you think Disney would have handled Scrappy?
I would have done it like Huey, Dewey, and Louie to Donald.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And they, you know, they got into trouble and they were annoying, but at the end of the day, they were always, you know, loved and brought back in. They meant well. So it's like Scrappy times 3. But
Yeah.
I mean, but I can't even bear to. But and I can't I you can edit this out. But when Wendy was talking about personal growth, it's like too bad that wasn't accomplished along with some physical growth for Scrappy. Take it out.
Well,
Take it
that would change him too much, though. See, the one thing about cartoon characters is that if you want them to have longevity, they have to sort of stay as what you know
I
them.
understand, but I still would like to see him as an older puppy. I would like to see him like twice the size he was. I would have liked to see him grow to be like a teenager. I mean, in the end, if they had made him over decades. In all
Well,
seriousness,
I still would argue that, like, okay, you can definitely cut this. I would still argue that Scrappy's dad was just a Chihuahua.
well, that's what I seem to think I've had that. Yeah,
Yeah,
so he just
and that would explain why he didn't get any bigger, because he couldn't.
or he had a
Because that,
pituitary gland problem. Okay, you edit that out.
No, all of this is staying in.
No.
Yeah. Oh yeah. This is the best part.
oh dear.
Love you. I love you, Wendy.
I know.
Even though I know I'm on your list.
Oh dear.
I think the way Disney would have handled Scrappy, it would depend on if they were human characters or animals, but part of me feels like if he had like the reputation that he has now, they would have just made him a villain and just stuck with that.
See,
But
I can't see him. He doesn't have enough negative qualities to qualify him as a villain. He just doesn't. He only ever went after people that he perceived to be the bad guy. Now, you
he
can make
peed on Daphne.
What?
not in real Scooby. Come on. Not in real Scooby.
I just feel like too, it's like Shaggy and Scooby, they're always just trying to hang back and Scrappy's trying to pull them into this. And if I had friends that were constantly pulling me into the worst danger, I would be more than pulling their little tail back. I mean, I would not really want to hang with them anymore.
Listen, if someone was picking on you, who are you going to take with you to walk down that scary street at night? You going to take Scooby and Shaggy, or you going to take Scrappy? If you say anyone other than Scrappy, you're a liar, and I don't believe you. See,
okay, that's still, you're turning an orange from an apple. And,
no, I'm not. No,
really?
No. The idea is he a villainous character or not? If the person bullying the bullies, if you think that's a bully, that's your problem. I don't agree with that. The kid that bullies the bully, who's picking on everybody else, he's the hero. And that's Scrappy.
Well, because Scrappy was bullying people that weren't bullying anyone else.
No. The only time that anything even approaches that is if he makes a mistake. Like when he jumps on Mr. Wolthouse in Night Ghoul of Wonderworld, where he runs in because they saw the Night Ghoul and he jumps on the guy and then he realizes, oh shoot, it's not the Night Ghoul. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Scrappy never goes after anyone that
he attacks the wrong person and the Scarab lives.
But that is not him making an intentional action towards someone that he knows is innocent. Motive has to matter. It has to.
I
You
don't
can't
know.
ignore motive.
In the real world, if you go up to someone and you perceive them as a threat in your mind, but they're not really a threat and you stab them, like you're not,
Okay, well, Scrappy never stabbed anybody, but there
well,
certainly are plenty of people in the world today who are like, that guy looked at me weird, call the police, and they get away with it.
yeah, I don't know. I'm still going with Scrappy's bully.
Well, I would take Scrappy with me to a fight any day of the week, and I would not take anyone else.
I'm the one avoiding the fight. So I'll be running the other way with Scooby and Shaggy.
And I still, well, yeah, the non-canon thing in the first movie though, I can't. It's so hard to get out of my head about what he did to Daphne. I just can't.
It's not even in my head because that doesn't even exist.
But
All right.
oh, I
Scrappy's
have
not
something
really the topic of this panel, so.
well, I have something to share.
Okay, well, let's do final thoughts.
Oh, final thoughts. Okay.
And Trevor, you can go first with your final thoughts.
Well, I thought this was a wonderfully good discussion, and it's nice that as we're airing it all out, that it's nice that both things can still exist, and I'm glad Mickey exists because I mean, as far as animation and creating not just some little cartoons that were groundbreaking, but creating a character that people could associate with did set the stage and become the evolutionary steps to loving someone like Scooby. So, I mean, he's a fairly good ancestor. So, I just think it's really good to talk about it. And what I did when you're talking about how they would do if they were handled by different studios, I decided to try my hand at drawing. Uh, so, so this
He's so cute.
Disney Scooby, and then Hanna-Barbera Mickey.
Yeah,
Yep.
I like them. I like them both. I think they definitely look like what they would look like for each studio.
Mm-hmm.
So, so yeah.
Wendy, your final thoughts?
I'm glad that both exist as well because they definitely both serve their own purpose in everyone's life, and I think that they serve like an important one. It's not just it's not just about entertainment, you know, and unfortunately that is not really a thing anymore. What is sad about the whole affair is that Hanna-Barbera is gone. The people that have Scooby now are hell-bent on destroying all of the good that is in him or just hiding him away, one or the other. But Disney also has kind of lost its magic too. And I think that's really unfortunate that two studios and two properties for children have just gone to pot. And I think that's super unfortunate that something that was such a mainstay and was really important in just life in general, what it has become. I think that the longevity of each, in part, came from the quality of what they were putting out. Disney art has inspired, I think, probably every artist that's ever walked the face of the earth in the last 100 years. I don't think there's any artist that has not been inspired by the backgrounds from, you know, Sleeping Beauty and Snow White and all of those things. Beautiful animation, beautiful artwork, and Hanna-Barbera exactly the same. All of their background art and stuff was just phenomenal and has inspired generations of artists. And that's gone in both of them. I'm not saying that there are not talented people still working for Disney, but if Disney and Hanna-Barbera had started in the digital age, I don't think that they would have had the longevity that they did. Because no matter how technically proficient your digital art is, it cannot compete or hold a candle to the human element. And yeah, I know it's a human doing the digital stuff, but through a computer interface, and the computer interface is taking away the charm of the hand done traditional painted things. And so, because and look at any of like the modern Disney movies, I don't think in 50 years we're going to be talking about Up or Moana or Coco. I think that they will have fallen by the wayside, forgotten. I think we'll still be talking about The Little Mermaid and Sleeping Beauty and Snow White and 101 Dalmatians. Part of that, I am positive, is due to the animation style and just the quality of that hand. You know, it's not too perfect. Digital is so easy to make perfect, and then it doesn't look human anymore. And I think that both studios owe a lot to the artists that brought those properties and those characters to life in specifically in that manner. And that is gone. And that is really sad. There will never be another Scooby the way that we know Scooby. There will never be another Sleeping Beauty the way that Disney originally made her. It's a thing of the past. And that is a terrible thing. And I am grateful that we have technology so that we can, you know, stream stuff and watch it on DVD and everything, and it doesn't have to be lost. But Disney and Hanna-Barbera and Scooby and Mickey, they are a lost art at this point in time. It will never be as it once was, and that's very unfortunate, but all the more reason, buy the physical media, because you can't trust streaming. That everyone has been learning that. You can't trust it. So you see the physical media for something that you love, buy it. Buy it, keep it, have it, because we're never going to see that kind of quality in both value and in execution ever again in animation. So props to the people from Hanna-Barbera, props to the originators at Disney for giving us something that does have longevity and that we can enjoy for generations to come. Because yeah, that ship has sadly sailed.
Yeah, there have definitely been some amazing artists at both studios. I mean, some of the artwork that, you know, you can buy for thousands of dollars, unfortunately. Good for them, not for us, but it's just amazing. These people are amazing. And yeah, the studios owe all of their success to the people that created these characters, that did the actual work. If it wasn't for them, the studios would have nothing. So, and another reason why we like to spotlight the people that worked on Scooby, because without them, there would be no Scooby. Yeah, and I mean, I'm happy that both exist. I've always preferred Hanna-Barbera over Disney. It's just, like Trevor said, Saturday morning cartoons, sitting with a bowl of Lucky Charms, watching, you know, TV. And yeah, there's something to be said about that. That was like just such a nice way to wake up in the morning. You know, you're spending time with your favorite characters and you don't really have a care in the world. You're just sitting there having a good time. So, and Disney has always stressed me out. They have a thing against moms, I guess. The mom always dies, so
Yep.
I don't know. But yeah, I am very happy that Scooby is not a Disney property, because it would have been totally different and it would not be that safe place. You know, walking into this room, having a bunch of Scooby stuff, if Scooby was Disney related, probably would not de-stress me like it does. So, yeah. We're going to wrap things up. Before we do, let everyone know where they can find you on social media. Wendy?
On Instagram, I'm Wendy Bridge. Twitter X, Wendy Loves Jesus, and my blog is wendylovesjesus.wordpress.com.
Trevor?
You can find me on Instagram at Funky Philosophy Fridays, and all the sounds are actually Fs.
And you can find all my links on ScoobyAddicts.com. Let us know your thoughts about Scooby versus Disney. And thank you for joining us for another Scooby panel. Thank you for tuning in to another Scooby panel. I'm Nikki Blake from ScoobyAddicts.com. If you like these panels, please subscribe to my channel for more great discussions. A huge shout out to our patrons, Julie Rosen, Ross from ScoobyFan.net, Tagus, Garrett Spencer, Paul the Scooby Dude, Jesse, and Brendan. If you would like to support the Scooby panel, please go to patreon.com/ScoobyAddicts. A very special thank you to artist, blogger, and Scooby collector Wendy BRYDGE and pop artist TREVOR HAWKINS. Scooby Panel is available in podcast form on most podcast platforms or as a web series on YouTube. You can find Scooby Panel on Instagram, Facebook, and X as @ScoobyPanel. Scooby and Shaggy were voiced by Scott Innes. Check out Scott's website, onescottshop.com. We are part of the Collector's Maze Network, where you can find all things geek. Scooby Addicts artwork by Will Davenport, Scooby Panel logo by Garrett Spencer, video editing by Nikki Blake, music composed and performed by Bovine Nightmares. Please join us next time for another Scooby panel.